At dawn in early October 2025, the road southeast of Kostyantynivka stops being open terrain and begins tightening into a shallow corridor, two cracked lanes of asphalt pressed between low-rising banks. A full Russian assault group moves into it in a single armored column T-72B3 and T-80 BVM tanks up front. BMP-2 and BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles close behind. Trucks carrying motorized infantry locked in at the rear. Mud pushes up around the tracks. Radios pulse with short updates. And platoon leaders confirm that the first Ukrainian trench line lies less than a kilometer ahead. Inside a buried Ukrainian command post, that same road exists only as a clean geometry on a NATO-standard digital fire control network. The Russian column is no longer steel, engines, or silhouettes. It is a continuous chain of white heat signatures advancing through predefined fireboxes. A Leleka 100 circles the staging area they departed minutes earlier. A Shark UAV holds position farther forward, feeding thermal overlays that turn every tank engine and every BMP hull into a numbered, trackable target. Artillery officers lean over tablets tied into M777 155mm and 2A65 MSAB 152mm batteries dug in behind the city. Every segment of road leading into Kostyantynivka already has firing data-loaded charges, elevations, fuse patterns waiting only for a single confirmation from the UAV layer above the valley. To the Russian crews, this is the beginning of a push toward the trenches. On the Ukrainian screens, it is a column that has entered a narrowing corridor with no lateral escape and is already inside a kill zone it has not recognized yet. In the weeks before the assault, Kostyantynivka sits at the junction of Russian attack axes pushing west from Bakhmut and south from the Toretsk line. On Russian planning maps, it is a hinge in the front if the eastern defensive belt breaks. Follow-on forces can roll toward the road network feeding Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. One narrow road cutting through low ground and light industrial zones stands out along that hinge, running straight toward the Ukrainian arc of trenches and strongpoints. Reconnaissance elements from a Russian motorized rifle brigade put drones over the area. Orlan 10 and Zala UAVs sweep the corridor, sending back video of cracked asphalt and scarred fields. The road is damaged but passable for tracked vehicles. Flanking fields are soft enough to slow wheeled vehicles, but too open for deep fortifications. On paper, the defenses look thin, scattered trenches, isolated firing points, no obvious belts in depth. Staff briefings reduce the problem to a formula mass armor, mechanized infantry, tube artillery, and BM-21 grad launchers on that single route for a short, violent breach. On Ukrainian maps, the same strip of terrain is already boxed in red. Staff officers have carved the road and its shoulders into numbered segments and fed them into the fire control network. Each segment covers 50 to 100 meters of roadway, ditches, and field edges. For each one, firing data for M777 155mm, A65, MSAB 152mm, and 2S1 Vozdika 122mm batteries sits pre-computed. Another layer marks ATGM engagement zones with overlapping arcs from both flanks. To the Ukrainian side, the thin section is not a weakness. It is a pre-built firebox. 2 or 3 days before the assault, Ukrainian recon confirms that the box will not stay empty. A Leleka 100 picks up rising vehicle traffic near a tree line, often used as a hide. A Shark UAV tracks low loaders arriving. T-72B3 and T-80 BVM tanks rolling down ramps and dispersing into revetments. In another room, SIGINT teams hear Russian brigade and battalion nets thicken with encrypted traffic, call signs switching in patterns that usually precede an operation. The picture tightens steel, fuel, and radios stacking along one narrow axis aimed straight at the rectangle on their screens. Ukrainian Artillery Command uses the new data to lock the geometry. The two-lane road becomes a central axis. The low rises, drainage ditches, and industrial compounds set the outer edges roughly 600 to 800 meters long and 150 to 200 meters wide. Inside that rectangle, they layer fire so that no vehicle can move more than a few seconds without crossing a registered impact pattern or an ATGM line of sight. On the situation display, the corridor is no longer just a road. It is a controlled volume where time, distance, and firepower are pre-arranged. Russian preparations follow a familiar template. Before dawn, batteries of 2S-19 Mestais and 2S-3A Akatsiya self-propelled howitzers nose into firing positions behind the assault axis. Target lists include known Ukrainian trenches, suspected ATGM nests, and crossroads that might host counterattacks. Electronic warfare vehicles set up to jam Ukrainian UAV control links and GPS along the corridor. Mortar units pre-plan smoke missions to blind observation on the forward slope. Crews check charge bags and fuses under red light, knowing the whole scheme depends on knocking Ukrainian eyes off the corridor long enough for armor to cross it. 0600 in early October 2025. Russian artillery opens. High explosive shells slam into forward trenches and tree lines, throwing dirt and shrapnel across positions. Smoke rounds bloom until sections of the front blur into a pale wall. Drone operators on the Russian side report some Ukrainian quadcopters dropping off the net and reduced visible movement near the nearest trenches. To the brigade commander, this looks like the window he needs. And the order goes out. Send in the column while the smoke still holds. On the Ukrainian side, the barrage registers as a pattern, not a surprise. Counter-battery radar and acoustic sensors plot trajectories within seconds. Forward observers in hardened dugouts feel the blasts above, but report that primary observation posts have survived. Many key positions sit deeper than the first layer of craters, under overhead cover built for 152 MHE in the command post. Icons change color as data arrives. Russian artillery has hit obvious trench lines, but not the buried sensor nodes or the fire control backbone. The kill zone plan stands. When the Russian column leaves its hide area, it squeezes onto the two-lane road in a slow, heavy flow. Tanks roll first, then BMPs, then trucks, all trying to stay within a single cleared track. The interval between tanks drops to 25-30 meters. BMP-2s and BMP-3s follow at similar spacing, their drivers fighting ruts and broken asphalt. The main combat body stretches to roughly 400 to 500 meters in length in open terrain. That would be a long formation. Inside the planned rectangle, almost the entire punch can fit inside the firebox at once, from turrets and driver's hatches. Russian crews see very little. Smoke, morning haze, and low ground cut off the horizon. What they get is the next short run of road, the shoulder, the dark line of a tree belt. The flanks are clouded and uneven. There is no room to push wide or form a proper line abreast. Engines strain as vehicles crawl over craters and broken pavement. Radio nets fill with short reports, distance calls, track problems, confirmations that no minefields have been hit yet as the lead elements close within 1,000 meters of the Ukrainian lines. The formation is moving, but it feels like it is moving inside a pipe. Above that pipe, Ukrainian UAV coverage locks in. The Leleka 100 watches staging grounds and supply routes behind the column. The Shark rides over the moving vehicles, sending back optical and thermal feeds that show each tank and BMP as bright blocks against dark ground. On monitors in the command post, tracks update every few seconds. The column is not just coming. It is measured speed, heading, position every step of the way. Artillery battery commanders receive more than grids. They get segment IDs, numbers of vehicles inside, rough types based on turret shape and heat signature. Fire plans update on the fly. Instead of broad suppressive fires, they prepare to drop concentrated bursts onto specific road segments as the column enters the box. Preloaded firing data cuts out long calculations. The system's cold logic leaves little room for guesswork. Around 06:12, the lead Russian tank pushes past the reference point the Ukrainians marked as the box entrance. The road bends slightly left between two low rises, tightening the corridor until the asphalt is the only safe line. Stepping off it means sinking into soft ground and exposing weaker plates. Behind them, the last BMPs and trucks are only now clearing the tree line to the east. For a brief span, the entire combat group sits between the entry and exit markers of the Ukrainian firebox, still rolling forward, but with every meter now defined, measured, and owned by someone else. The fire order from Ukrainian direction centers snaps across the net like a switch being thrown. M777 tubes lock into their segments. Two A65 crews brace. Two S1 guns wait frozen on their lines. Within seconds, the first full salvos leave their barrels, the reports rolling across the rear like a physical shockwave. Impacts land almost instantly. The center of the Russian column erupts in overlapping blasts. BMP-2 hulls rip open. A truck disintegrates into burning debris. Fragments ricochet off armor. Smoke folds downward into the corridor instead of rising, trapped by cool air and low rises. Up front, the leading T-72B3 surges through dust for a moment, then the Stugna P strike hits. The missile spears in low, punching into the turret ring with a flash that brightens through the fog. The tank shudders, drops nose first, and blocks the lane as a single dead weight of glasses and ripped steel. Drivers behind it stomp brakes, tracks clatter. The formation buckles. At the rear, the second Stugna P team fires. Their missile arcs once, then falls into the rear deck of the trailing vehicle. Fire vents out of hatches and engine grills. The last mobile unit locks in place, sealing the tail of the column. The corridor becomes a box in an instant. There is no forward. There is no reverse. Engines roar inside the trap. Not from momentum, but panic crews trying to claw for distance that no longer exists. Dust, exhaust, and propellant smoke mix until the Russian tank crews are blind inside their own armor. Radios spike with overlapping commands and half-finished orders. Some vehicles try to angle off the road, but soft ground drags them down, exposing weaker armor. Others hesitate, stalled by burning hulks ahead. Artillery fire ramps up. The middle stretch of road takes overlapping patterns, salvos walking up and down the corridor, then quick shifts to the shoulders where vehicles are trying to angle into ditches. Each correction is based on live UAV imagery, measured in meters. Surviving vehicles feel their hulls ringing, antennae torn away, optics cracked. Crews shout over internal intercoms as dust and smoke flood compartments. Russian crews try to force structure back into the fight. Some tanks swing turrets toward suspected ATGM nests and send high-explosive shells into tree lines and building fronts. BMPs pop smoke grenades and push infantry out into whatever cover exists along the road. But every move slams into the same limits. The corridor is narrow. Vehicles cannot fan out. Infantry are forced into ditches and shallow depressions that Ukrainian gunners have already plotted. The first Russian squads off the vehicles run into carefully timed fragment storms. Two S1 guns, held in reserve, start dropping airburst rounds just beyond the column, over the spots where soldiers are likely to dive for cover. Shrapnel rains down on men trying to set up machine guns or drag RPGs toward berms and walls. Some reach shell holes and low ground and begin returning fire, but their view is narrow and their knowledge of Ukrainian observers is almost zero. As the lane fills with wrecks, Ukrainian units add another layer FPV drones. Small quadcopters with shaped charge warheads launch from behind the trenches and skim in low along pre-marked routes. Operators steer them into armor plates already damaged by artillery, into engine decks of tanks still idling, into turret roofs of BMPs that look intact. Targets are chosen to deny recovery later immobilized tanks not yet burning, trucks still upright, platforms that might still move. Each impact is a single, sharp blast followed by silence on that vehicle's net. In the Russian rear, battalion and brigade headquarters try to make sense of the traffic. Some vehicles report heavy shelling and partial damage. Others report blocked road sections, burning equipment, jammed tracks. UAV crews assigned to support the assault report video links cutting out as drones cross into the corridor. No single report gives a full picture, but everyone carries the same theme: the column is no longer at planned speed, and vehicle losses are climbing. Attempts to pull back begin piecemeal. A few BMP drivers throw their vehicles into reverse, trying to steer backward through the fire lane and around burning hulls. Others try to break off the asphalt and crawl along the field edge. Those who leave the road cross another layer of the Ukrainian plan. Some detonate anti-tank mines set along the box boundary. Others draw fresh ATGM shots from positions that have stayed quiet until now. On the Ukrainian side, fire discipline holds. Batteries stick to ammunition limits. Priority goes to vehicles that might still punch through anything near the western edge of the box. Clusters of intact infantry. Command and control platforms identified by distinctive antenna arrays or hotter thermal signatures. Net traffic stays short corrections in meters. Ammo counts. Confirmations of destroyed vehicles relayed from UAVs. After roughly 10-15 minutes of sustained fire, the structure of the Russian column is gone. Lead tanks are disabled or burning. Multiple BMPs sit crippled along the center stretch of road, some at angles that show desperate attempts to maneuver around wrecks. Trucks are scattered, cargo thrown into ditches and onto embankments. Smoke rises from multiple points, forming vertical markers that anyone on the front can see. The only vehicles still fully mobile cluster near the eastern edge of the box, unwilling to re-enter the lane that has just chewed up their forward elements. Some Russian crews manage to back out of the immediate kill area, using smoke and short pauses between salvos to escape. They reverse into dips or behind buildings near the approach route and start throwing up improvised defensive positions. Ukrainian artillery does not chase every last hull. Some guns shorten missions and switch to counter-battery work, anticipating retaliation from 2S-19, 2S-3 and rocket units farther east. The corridor itself stays under a hard gaze. UAVs continue to orbit. Any engine that turns over, any attempt to tow a wreck, any group of infantry moving in more than a few men at a time can trigger a short, sharp correction fire mission. What started the morning as an assault route is now a strip of wreckage and scattered survivors. Still sitting inside the same red rectangle on Ukrainian screens, the box that the column entered at 0612 and never truly left. By late morning in early October 2025, the road southeast of Kostyantynivka is no longer an axis of advance, but a burned-in shape on Ukrainian screens. The red rectangle, 600-800 meters of corridor, 150 to 200 meters wide, shows only fading heat from wrecked hulls, T-72B3, T-80BVM, BMP-2, BMP-3 trucks stopped at crooked angles. Ammunition still cooks off in a few of them. FPV teams make final confirmation runs. Artillery officers close missions and log the box as complete. On the Russian side, the picture is fragmented. A few surviving vehicles idle in shallow cover near the approach route. Infantry who escaped the corridor cling to ditches without direction. Battalion and company call signs meant to lead the assault no longer reply. The brigade still exists on paper, but its spearhead has been broken inside a space the Ukrainians measured in advance. 10 to 15 minutes of coordinated fire shells, missiles, drones erased a column that took weeks of fuel, transport, and artillery prep to assemble. The front line east of Kostyantynivka does not move that day, but the pattern is clear on a battlefield saturated with sensors. Any force that agrees to move in single file down a narrow corridor becomes not a breakthrough, but a set of coordinates, and once that corridor closes, it becomes a kill zone.